Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Hi, this is Jamie Anderson, and I am the owner of Duck's Cottage Coffee and Books, located in Duck, North Carolina, which is a little resort town located on the Outer Banks. We've been in business for 25 years, and I've been buying books for all 25 years. Today, we are talking with Emilee Hackney, who grew up in the coal fields of Southwest Virginia. She graduated from Harvard University with a BA in English and briefly attended Vanderbilt University's MFA program. All That's Unseen is her first book and has been chosen as a fall 2026 Indies Introduced book by the Indie Introduced panel. I was pleased to be part of that panel, and we started with 72 books, and we went to 48, 36, ultimately to 10, and All That's Unseen is one of those 10. Emilee, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. That's a lovely introduction. I'm just really pleased to be talking to you today.
I'm so excited to actually hear you talk because you talk about your accent so much in the book. It's fun to finally hear
You got to
it.
hear the real thing.
The real deal. So the cover of your book, All That's Unseen, clearly states that it is an Appalachian memoir. But you could have really easily pivoted and turned this into a novel. Just your characters, who obviously are real people, not characters, are so well written, so flushed out. And then the heart of your story is your actual journey. But what made you decide to make it a memoir instead of flipping it into a novel?
Well, it's interesting. As a kid, I used to write these little stories. I always thought that maybe I'd write a book one day. It'd be like some kind of fun little fantasy book or something fiction. I was even, like you mentioned, in Vanderbilt's MFA fiction program for a little while. But the story of my life just ended up being the thing that I had to write about first because I spent a lot of time writing about Appalachia when I was an undergrad at Harvard. I'd gone from the coal fields to Harvard, which was a very jarring transition to say the least. And one of the ways that I found myself and found a sense of belonging in a place that I didn't feel like I really belonged was through writing about my life and my experiences growing up in Appalachia in the coal fields. Um, so yeah, that just ended up being what I was writing about. Those essays that I wrote turned into this book, and yeah, somehow it's here and it's published, and it's crazy that it exists in the world.
I mean, it just came out last week, so he's still just kind of in a state of, I don't know, what is it like? Disbelief, awe, surreal.
Yeah. Oh, it's so surreal. It's so strange. I've gotten so many emails and messages. I don't know if I'll ever be able to catch up to them all. And it's so strange knowing that's all because of like the words I put out into the world. People saying I enjoyed the book or your story resonated with me in some way. Um, so it's like a very vulnerable feeling that my life story is out there, but also it's very gratifying knowing that it resonates with a lot of people.
Hmm. So, growing up in Southwest Virginia in coal country, just a few generations from the mine, you always kind of felt like an outsider. And then you go to Harvard where you're, among minds and books and intellect, and you still felt like an outsider. Can you just talk more about this? Because that's a lot of your life to feel like you don't belong.
But I wouldn't say that I really felt like an outsider much when I was growing up there because I was so deeply rooted in the community and my family was too. And what made me feel like an outsider, I think, is once I finally did go to Harvard, which, like I write in my book, that's not something anybody from where I'm from had done before. And like I said, it was such a jarring transition. I just felt like I could never belong there. There was no place for me there. So I felt like an outsider there. But it's when I first went home from being at Harvard, I think that first break, that first summer break, I spent a few months back home where I'd grown up. That was the first time I felt like an outsider there. And it's
Okay.
because I had left and come back. And I guess it's a hard thing to explain, but growing up, I always had this. A lot of other people, I think, felt this way too. If somebody grew up where I did and then left, it almost made them like a traitor. There's always kind of this suspicion of people who would leave um, Caswell or just these small insular towns to go somewhere else, almost like a disrespectful thing, like a slap in the face almost. It's like you didn't trust somebody that left. It's like they thought they were better than you for leaving and not staying. Um, and so when I went back home, I started to feel a little bit of that suspicion, distrust. People didn't seem to see me the same way as they had before I'd left. And it was a very difficult thing to grapple with because, I don't belong. I don't feel like I belong at Harvard. But then I come home and I don't belong there anymore. So I'm like, where do I belong? Where's my place? What's home? I don't know what this means for me anymore. So it's a real identity crisis, and I guess it's something I still kind of grapple with even today. I've moved around a lot in my life, and it just seems like nowhere is a perfect fit anymore, and I don't know that it ever will be.
No, I totally get that. I'm the only person in my family to ever leave a small rural county in Pennsylvania. And so there's always that like, why? And
Yeah,
I definitely
yeah.
know what you mean. It's almost like a slap in the face to everybody who never has left.
Yeah, I'm glad you
It's
understand
cheap.
it.
I
It's kind
know.
of sad. It's like that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to like go somewhere and experience something different and do something different with my life. And,
Yeah,
it's
live your
not
life.
insulting or it's not meant to be insulting, but that can
Hmm.
be how it's seen sometimes.
It's like you're turning your back on, the life that they all have chosen, whether willingly or not, but
Hmm.
and so no, I totally get it. Um, so as I said before, the cover of the book says Appalachian Memoir, but it also is a little bit of an expose of the Pentecostal faith, and then kind of the way our political parties treat rural populations, which is a huge part of our country. Um, so did you think the three went hand in hand? Your Appalachian home place, and then that faith, and then the parties that take those two things for granted.
At least in my story, in my experience, they go hand in hand
Hmm.
because, I grew up in Appalachia and I grew up Pentecostal and the church that I was involved in was pretty well known in the community, and a lot of people attended it, including, some community leaders. It felt very entwined in like local leadership and local government, not much of a separation of church and state. That's what
Hmm.
that's what it felt like. So I felt like growing up in Appalachia also meant growing up Pentecostal, at least in the reason, or in, I should say, growing up in Appalachia also meant growing up religious in my experience. Most people I knew would have said they were Christian, and quite a few people were evangelical, quite a few family members and friends, and just people I grew up with. Um, and then the politics is intertwined in that too, because in the church that I grew up with and the beliefs that I had, the beliefs that a lot of other people I grew up around had, that aligns with conservative values. Um, so yeah, it feels like everything is just tied in together. We hear a lot about Christian nationalism and evangelicalism being linked to that. And yeah, in my experience, that was true. While I was living in Appalachia, I was there when Trump campaigned in Southwest Virginia, I went to one of his rallies because everybody I knew at the time was supporting him. This was in 2016, during his first campaign, and it just seemed like everybody was for him, and I should be for him too. And yeah, I'm kind of rambling now, but all these things are linked together.
Yeah. But then, he gets elected and kind of the people you grew up with who are rooting for him so hard seem to be at the bottom of the list, of these conservative parties and Republican platform. They just seem to be disposable in the end in terms of we're going to tell you whatever you want to hear, but you're going to be the last people to benefit from this.
Yeah, I can't say that it feels like, Trump has helped Appalachia in any noticeable
Yeah.
way.
And
And
you
I,
go into that in a great, in more depth in the book too. I just want, readers and listeners also to know that, of course, we're just touching the surface on some of these topics, but throughout Emilee's book, it really, it's very timely, it's very current, and there's a lot of things I felt like the one we just talked about, where kind of a blind following for conservative parties in these type of regions. And of course, this is going to go across the country in a lot of rural regions. Um, but no questions are really asked. And I like that you ask those questions like, but is this a good thing?
Mhm.
For my home place, for my community. Um, so I like the exploration of that. And I think other readers will as well. Because that's really kind of by the middle of the book where you branch out from memoir to tying in these other bigger topics, which I think will be of interest to a lot of people. How did you arrive at the title, All That's Unseen?
I've got to say, the title was the very last thing that came with this book. It was edited, it was like fully ready to go, and I had been struggling with the title the entire time. And me and my editors were just picking our brains over and over and over. But we finally came up with it because it seemed to encompass a lot of themes and moments in the book. Like
Mhm.
some of the ones I'm thinking of. So I go from the coal fields to Harvard, right? And I go up there and I am immediately just stereotyped because of my accent and my background. And so I don't feel like I feel invisible. I don't feel like anybody really sees me as a person. They just see my background. They see where I come from. They see all the stereotypes that they associate with that. So I'm invisible on campus, right? And it also alludes to the secret life of my former fiance, who's just somebody who turns out I don't know who he is. He's living this secret life. So that's another element. And then the religious element too that we've already touched on. There are a lot of mysterious forces of the religion that I grew up in,
Mhm.
the workings of the Holy Spirit, things that you can't see but still act upon you and that you experience. So there are a lot of little threads to pull with the word
Yeah.
unseen.
Yeah. No, I mean it makes sense because there was a lot, I think, going on in all these different areas of your life that you had to kind of uncover for yourself and
Mhm.
discover. So it's a good title. Are there any, there's a lot of people in this book, and you did a really great job of, just really giving us full, see, I hate to say use the word characters because that seemed like such a fiction, but the people in your book are so alive. They're so palpable. Like I could see them, I could hear them, I could picture Jeremy's behavior. I could picture the people in the church behavior. Um, and I just kind of wonder, are there any relationships you worry about um, now with the book coming out, that you still have that make you nervous to see that person again, that you might worry or has been put in jeopardy? I just think it would be
Oh.
really hard to write about people you know and not.
I know what you mean. I think the one person that I was worried about reading my book, was my mom because, she's in it quite prominently in the early parts too. And, I talk about some of her and my dad's financial struggles and some of the choices they made. And I worried that she wouldn't be happy that I was writing about those and putting them in a book for, people across the country and world to read. But I let her read kind of an earlier draft of my book, and she definitely had some hesitations about it, but she also said, "This is your story, this is your experience. Like, even though this is something I did, or this is still your life story, and you're allowed to write about it. I know I'm part of your life, and this is what you saw and experienced, and you're not trying to speak for me. You're just speaking your own truth, and I happen to be part of that." So she was ultimately, okay with it. And
Uh-huh.
she was at my launch event last Tuesday, and it was wonderful to have her there, for her to be part of the book, part of my story, and for her to be so supportive of
Yeah.
it. So yeah, she was like the one person whose opinion I was really worried about. Everybody else, like, whatever. My book's for some people, it's probably not.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, mom's opinion matters most.
No, they always do, don't they? Um, do you know where Jeremy is, your coworker at Subway is a kind of a big part of your life for a while, as is your coworker Jeremy, who I don't know, he kind of, I don't know if he helps tether you, but there's something in that relationship I feel that really keeps helping keep you up and then gets you out of Tazewell. Do you know where he is?
Yeah, he was such an important part of my life, and I really haven't spoken to him since the last time he appears in my book,
Uh-huh.
which was right at the beginning of COVID, time-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been over 6 years at this point, and he's always just been somebody that's difficult to get a hold of. He doesn't really keep up social media, and he's, changed phone numbers a few times, and it was like that with several people that I worked with or that I've been previously friends with. Several people I don't know where they are anymore that appear in my book. And that makes me a little sad, It's like I'd love to see them again and talk to them, and be like, "Hey, I wrote this book, and like you're part of it." Because it feels a
Mm-hmm.
little bit wrong for them to not know, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I do wish that I knew where he was. But that's also why I have the dedication to him,
Yeah.
to Jeremy, wherever you are, because, I hope he's doing well, wherever he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. He was, I enjoyed his appearance in the book. Um, so Sam is another person from your history who is a huge part of the book. Um, and you began dating him when you were 14 and he was 18 or 19 at the
18.
time.
Mhm.
And a big part of the church that you belong to. But I was just wondering, like, is there any advice you would give 14-year-old Emilee
Oh
looking
God, I'd
back
be like, don't
now?
do it. Like, just get out of there. Run far away. Well,
Yeah,
that's a funny question because I've I think about what advice I would give myself, but I don't think that I would listen to it. I was
yeah,
so stubborn and just so convinced, like, this is right, this is what I want. And then, I'm getting deeper into the church at the same time. I'm getting more involved in this bad relationship, and the two are intertwined, and I just become so convinced that God wants me to marry this older man.
hmm
Um, so I don't know that anybody could have talked me out, even my older self could have talked me out of what I was trying to do and what I believed in.
yeah,
But I sure would love, I don't know. It's funny. I don't think that I would go back and change anything, as difficult as things were, because I feel like I've ended up in a really good place in my life right now.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't think I would necessarily change anything as bad as things got. Then that kind of feels crazy to say, but
Mhm.
yeah.
I was so disappointed in the other members of the church because I just was, I couldn't quite figure out where their heads were, especially when they, kind of advised you to go back to him after everything that happened. I mean, have you ever circled back around to that church or that faith?
I think that this really speaks to how dangerous fundamental beliefs can be because you can become so convinced of a thing that you really don't see outside evidence. You don't take outside evidence as truth. You're not willing to change your mind. You're just so convinced of what you believe to be true, which in this case was like God's will is this. So no matter the circumstances, you have to follow God's will. And there's just absolutely no questioning that. So I probably would have called myself an atheist for a while after all this for several years because I was just so mad and just felt so disillusioned with the church and the people I'd been involved with in that church, people in my community that still continued to be friends with my fiance and kind of support him. And I just felt so, yeah, disillusioned is the best word that I can use here. It's funny because I've found myself in a Presbyterian church. My husband, my current husband, he is not. He did not grow up Pentecostal, and we found this Presbyterian church together, and we were both really, really into it. It's like as far as Pentecostalism as possible. It's like Presbyterianism is so boring, which is great. It's
I
fantastic.
also grew up Presbyterian.
Yeah, it's so boring, and that's what I wanted. That's what we both wanted
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
So yeah, we belong to a Presbyterian church now, and it's a great home for my returned faith, my newfound faith. It just looks completely different than what it used to be.
yeah.
Um,
Is there anything that you would like a bookseller in the middle of the country to know about your book?
I think that there are elements of my book, my background, that can probably resonate with any reader that's either grown up or lived in a small town, a small rural town.
Mm.
Um, it was kind of like we were talking about earlier. Um, Sometimes you grow up in a small town and you leave and then you come back and people see you as a little bit different, or you don't come back and you're just seen as an outsider. You just don't belong anymore. Once you make that transition, that's it. Um, and, I talk a little bit about in my book about how everybody knows everybody and it's just so small and you can't really escape your community. Anything that happens there, it's going to stay and the people are going to talk about it. And, I just think that there are certain experiences to rural life that are universal, no matter where your town, your hometown is, whether it's in the
Mhm.
Midwest or the Southeast or Canada or, wherever. Um, so I hope that rural readers find something that resonates with them in my book too.
Yeah. You could almost call it a small town memoir in a
Yeah,
way.
that'd be a great alternate subtitle. I love that.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be Appalachian.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean because I haven't lived where I grew up for over 30 or 40 years, and I just still don't get over the being watched
Yeah.
aspect of living in a small town where probably like you did too, you were related to at least 50 to 60% of them, so the eyes always knew like who to pass the information on to. There's a
hmm hmm
lot. So what are you working on now?
Well, I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2022,
Oh, wow.
and that's actually where I met my husband, funnily enough. He's from Southwest Virginia too, but we met randomly at a hostel in Pennsylvania while we were both through hiking individually. So we got off the trail and we started dating because we lived really close to each other. Ended up getting married. We've got a 6-month-old now. But anyway, I'm just writing a book about my through hike
Mm-hmm.
because it was a fun experience, great experience. Met my husband. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got romance, you got adventure. What more could you want?
Yeah. Well, and you have a great way with nonfiction,
Well,
that
thank you.
just makes it so just very easy to read, and it's kind of, I guess it's really narrative nonfiction. So if you can take what you did in All That's Unseen into something like that, especially from kind of a woman's perspective, and then like you say, you get the romance, and that sounds like a great book.
Well, thank you. I hope it turns into something.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend anybody listening that you bring in Emilee's book for your shelves. It came out last week. I've got it also has got a nice little mention in the Southern Booksellers review by me. So
Oh,
you
thank
can
you.
always go online to SEBA and print that out and make your own shelf talker for the shelves. But I think it definitely has place in anybody's memoir section or just nonfiction section, and you'll have a happy reader. All right, well, I'd just like to thank Emilee again for joining us to talk about her Indies introduced title, All That's Unseen. Emilee, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's just been great talking to you.
Yeah, I can't wait to keep hand selling your book on the floor and look forward to what you do next.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!